Mary Thompson was trembling with rage. After 12 years of being treated as invisible, she was about to explode in the face of her millionaire boss's fiancé. Victoria had just publicly humiliated him, calling his delicate condition disgusting while laughing with her friends in the mansion's dining room. What this 45-year-old housekeeper would do in the next few minutes would change everything in that house forever. But what Victoria didn't know was that the millionaire was perfectly healthy. He had been faking his illness for weeks to discover who truly cared about him, and Mary was about to defend someone who had never defended her. This confrontation would reveal the difference between real love and pure interest, changing 3 lives forever in ways no one could have imagined. But before we continue, check if you're already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? James Harrison sat in his marble-floored study, staring at the medical reports spread across his mahogany desk. At 52, he was one of America's wealthiest real estate moguls, but wealth had taught him a bitter lesson about human nature. The reports were fake, meticulously crafted by his private physician to support the elaborate deception he had been planning for months. His fiancée, Victoria Ashford, descended the grand staircase that morning, her designer heels clicking against the Italian marble. At 32, she was the epitome of high society perfection, always impeccably dressed and constantly posting their lifestyle on social media. She settled at the breakfast table on the terrace, immediately absorbed in her phone. "Darling, we need to talk about the wedding," James said, taking a seat across from her at the glass table. Victoria didn't look up from her screen, where she was updating her Instagram stories with photos of their mansion's infinity pool and imported cars gleaming in the garage. "What about it? The dress is chosen, the venue is booked at the country club, and our honeymoon in the Maldives is confirmed," she replied, still scrolling through her phone. "Everything's perfect. It's not about the arrangements, it's about us." Finally, Victoria looked at him, her expression showing impatience rather than concern. "What do you mean, us?" "We're fine, James. You give me everything I need, and I'm the perfect woman by your side. What's the problem?" James had been wrestling with doubt for months. Did Victoria truly love him, or just his money and status? Would she stay by his side if he lost everything, if he got sick, if he truly needed her? The uncertainty was eating away at him, and he needed to know the truth before their wedding in 6 weeks. Mary Thompson entered silently to collect the breakfast dishes, as she had done every morning for 12 years. At 45, she knew every corner of this house better than its owner. To James, she had always been invisible, just another fixture to keep his life running smoothly. But Mary heard everything, and despite his arrogance, she knew James was a deeply lonely man behind all that wealth. "Sorry, darling. I have Pilates in 15 minutes, Victoria announced, standing and giving James a quick cold kiss on the forehead. "Then, I'm going shopping with the girls. Don't wait up for lunch." She grabbed her designer purse and left, leaving behind only the scent of expensive perfume and an uncomfortable silence. Alone on the terrace, James watched the perfectly manicured garden. Everything in his life seemed perfect on the surface, but something was fundamentally wrong. He needed to be sure about Victoria's feelings before their wedding. That's when the dangerous but necessary idea formed in his mind. What if he pretended to be seriously ill? Mary returned to collect the remaining dishes, and for the first time in years, James really looked at her. He noticed her calloused hands from years of hard work, her posture always straight despite long hours, and something in her eyes he had never perceived before, a mixture of dignity and kindness that brutally contrasted with the emptiness he saw in Victoria's eyes. "Mary," he said, surprising her. She stopped, clearly shocked that he had spoken her name. "Yes, Mr. Harrison? Are you happy working here?" The question caught her completely off guard. In 12 years, James had never shown any interest in her life or feelings. "I do my job, sir," she replied diplomatically. James nodded, lost in thought. Mary finished collecting the dishes and withdrew, but not before casting a worried glance in her employer's direction. That night, while Victoria slept soundly beside him after another day of shopping and beauty treatments, James finalized his plan. He would fake having a serious heart condition, something that would require constant care and total dedication. It would be the definitive test to discover Victoria's true feelings. What James didn't know was that his lie about being sick would reveal truths about love, character, and human dignity that would completely change his worldview. And the person he had always treated as invisible would be the one to teach him the most important lessons of his life. The next morning, James put his plan into action. At 7 a.m., while Victoria was still sleeping, he called his private doctor, Dr. Michael Stevens. "Doctor, I need a very special favor," James said, already rehearsing his performance. "I need you to confirm to my fiancée that I have a delicate condition, temporary, but requiring complete rest." Dr. Stevens, accustomed to the whims of his millionaire clients, agreed to participate in the charade for a generous consultation fee. At 8:30, when Victoria came down for breakfast, she found James still in pajamas, with a deliberately pale face and slow, calculated movements. "Honey, aren't you going to the office today?" she asked, serving herself her usual green juice. "Victoria, I need to tell you something," James said, sitting heavily in his chair. "I went to the doctor yesterday. The test showed something concerning." The fork with fruit stopped mid-air. Victoria stared at him with a mixture of surprise and something James couldn't immediately identify. "Concerning how?" "My heart," James continued. "Dr. Stevens said I need absolute rest for the next few months. No work, no stress, and I'll need special care." The silence that followed was revealing. Victoria lowered her fork, her expression changing from surprise to what seemed like irritation. "Months, James. Our wedding is in 6 weeks. I know, darling, we might have to postpone it." "Postpone?" Victoria's voice rose an octave. "I've already sent the invitations and posted on social media. All my friends are expecting it." James carefully observed her reaction. Not a word about his health, not a sign of concern for his well-being. At that moment, Mary entered discreetly to serve coffee. As always, she immediately noticed something was different. James seemed dejected, and Victoria was visibly agitated. "Mary," James said, deciding to test the situation further, "starting today, I'll need extra help. I can't make any efforts." "Of course, Mr. Harrison. What do you need?" Mary responded promptly, without questioning. Victoria looked at her with disdain. "She's going to take care of you, James. You need a professional nurse, not a domestic employee." Mary lowered her eyes, accustomed to subtle humiliations, but James noticed how she shrank slightly at the comment. "Mary has taken care of this house for years. She knows what to do," James replied, surprising himself by defending her. "This is ridiculous, honey. You have money to hire the best healthcare professionals in the country," Victoria insisted, her voice laden with impatience. Dr. Stevens arrived punctually at 10 a.m., as arranged. Tall, with greying hair and a solemn posture, he played his part perfectly. "Miss Ashford," he said, addressing Victoria with studied seriousness, "you need to understand the gravity of the situation. Your fiancé shows signs of severe cardiac overload. Any additional stress could worsen his condition." Victoria paled, but not in the way James expected. Instead of concern, he saw fear, but not for him. It was fear of how this would affect her life. "Doctor, how long will he be like this?" she asked. "Hard to say. Could be months, maybe longer. It depends on how he responds to treatment and rest." "Months?" Victoria murmured, as if the word were a prison sentence. After the doctor left, Victoria locked herself in the bedroom to make phone calls. James managed to hear fragments of the conversations through the intercom. "Mom, it's a nightmare. He's sick, very sick. I don't know for how long." "The wedding?" "Yes, I know you warned everyone." Meanwhile, Mary discreetly organized the master bedroom so James could rest comfortably. She arranged extra pillows, checked that there was fresh water beside the bed, and without anyone asking, prepared light soup for lunch. Her care was instinctive, genuine, without expectation of recognition or reward. "Mary," James called when she was adjusting the curtains. "Yes, sir." "Why do you do this?" "Do what, sir?" "Take care of me without complaining. Victoria is on the phone crying because our life has changed, but you just help." Mary hesitated, carefully choosing her words. "It's my job to take care of this house and those who live in it, Mr. Harrison. When someone is sick, they need care, not complaints." The simplicity of the response hit James like a punch to the stomach. That was exactly it. Care without expectation of return, without drama, without self-pity. In the afternoon, Victoria finally came downstairs. She was dressed to go out, wearing a tight white dress and high heels. "Where are you going?" James asked. "Meeting the girls." "I need to process all this," she replied, avoiding looking at him directly. "Victoria, I'm sick. Don't you want to stay with me?" She stopped at the door, her shoulders visibly contracting. "James, you know I don't handle these things well. Hospitals, illnesses, these depressing situations. It's not my thing." You have Mary for that." And she left, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and a bitter feeling in the air. Mary, who had witnessed the scene from the kitchen, appeared a few minutes later with a cup of chamomile tea. "I thought this might help you relax, sir," she said softly. James observed her, really observed her. He saw genuine concern in her dark eyes, kindness in her careful gestures, dignity in her posture despite years of being treated as invisible. "Mary, can I ask you a personal question?" She seemed surprised but nodded. "Have you ever felt truly loved?" The question caught her off guard. She remained silent for a long moment. "Yes, sir. My daughter loves me without wanting anything in return." "And a husband?" "I don't have a husband, sir. I never had time for those things. I work here and take care of my daughter." That night, while Victoria was processing the situation at a chic bar with her friends, Mary brought James dinner in bed: vegetable soup, toast, and more tea. "Mary," he said when she was about to leave. "Yes, sir?" "Thank you." She smiled, a small but genuine smile. It was the first time in years that James had thanked her for something she had done. Outside, through the silk curtains, the city lights twinkled indifferently. But inside that marble mansion, something fundamental had begun to change. James was discovering the difference between those who stay out of love and those who flee out of convenience. And this discovery was just beginning. 3 days had passed since James began his charade, 3 days that revealed more about the people around him than 12 years of living together. Victoria had created an almost scientific routine of avoidance. She woke up late, had breakfast quickly while obsessively checking her phone, and left for unavoidable commitments: gym, beauty salon, lunches with friends, shopping. She always returned late at night when James was already sleeping. On the third morning, she came down wearing a striking red dress and heels that echoed across the marble floor like hammers. "Good morning, honey," she said, giving James a quick, cold kiss on the forehead. "How are you feeling today?" The question sounded mechanical, as if it was something she had rehearsed. "Not very well. I had a difficult night," James replied, carefully observing her reaction. Victoria made an involuntary grimace, the same expression she made when stepping on something disgusting on the street. "Oh, what a shame. Did you take your medications?" "Yes, Mary helped me." "Good thing she's taking care of that," Victoria said, clearly relieved not to have to get involved. "Honey, I'm going out with Fernanda today. She's going through a difficult phase and needs support." James almost laughed at the irony. Victoria had time and emotional energy to support a friend in crisis, but fled from him when he needed care. "Don't you want to stay with me today? Maybe we could watch a movie together." "Oh, James, you know movies make me sleepy. Besides, you need to rest." "You don't want me to find it tiring, do you?" She laughed, but there was something cruel in that sound. After Victoria left, Mary appeared with breakfast. She had noticed that James was eating little and had started preparing more appetizing dishes: fruits cut into interesting shapes, perfectly golden toast, varied natural juices. "Mary, you don't need to do this," James said, observing the care with which she had arranged the tray. "You're not eating well, sir. When we get sick, we lose our appetite. But it's important to maintain nutrition," she replied, adjusting the pillows behind him. "How do you know that?" Mary paused as if she wasn't used to sharing personal information. "My daughter got very sick when she was little. Pneumonia. I spent 3 weeks taking care of her in the hospital. I learned that even food presentation makes a difference in recovery." "And she got better?" "She did, thank God. Today she's in college, studying nursing." James felt something strange in his chest. In 12 years, he had never asked about Mary's personal life. He didn't know she had a daughter, much less that she was in university. "She wants to be a nurse because of you." Mary smiled with genuine pride. "She says she wants to take care of people like I take care of this house. She says she sees how care can make a difference in someone's life." At that moment, James's phone rang. It was Victoria. "Honey, change of plans. Fernanda got a table at that Japanese restaurant that's impossible to book. I'm having lunch with her there. Don't wait for me for dinner either. After that, we're going to the theater." "Victoria, don't you think you're overdoing it by going out every day?" There was a tense pause on the other end of the line. "James, I can't stop my life because you're sick. This is too heavy. I need to maintain my mental sanity too." The call ended abruptly. James stared at the phone, trying to process what he had just heard. His illness was depressing to her. She needed to keep her distance from him to preserve her mental sanity. Mary, who had witnessed the conversation, discreetly began collecting the dishes. Mary, can I ask another personal question? Of course, Mr. Harrison. When your daughter was sick in the hospital, did you go out to have fun to maintain your mental sanity? Mary stopped what she was doing and looked him directly in the eyes for the first time. Mr. Harrison, when someone we love is suffering, the last thing we want to do is have fun. Being away from her was torture. I only left the hospital to shower at home and rush back. The brutal simplicity of that response echoed in the silence of the room. James felt as if he had been slapped, not by Mary but by reality. In the afternoon alone, James began to really observe his house. For the first time, he noticed details that Mary kept impeccable. The flowers always fresh in the vases, books organized by author on his shelves, curtains always in the perfect position to filter light without glare. When Mary brought the afternoon snack, sandwiches cut into triangles and fresh orange juice, James made a decision. Mary, sit here with me. She seemed genuinely shocked. Mr. Harrison, please sit down, I want to talk to you. Hesitant, Mary sat on the edge of the armchair beside the bed. In 12 years I never asked about your life. That's not normal, is it? Mary lowered her eyes, uncomfortable. I don't usually mix personal life with work, sir. That's not it. It's that I never cared, and that's wrong, James said, his voice laden with guilt he was beginning to recognize. Tell me about your daughter. Slowly, Mary began talking about Jessica, 22 years old, who was in her final year of nursing school, about how she worked 2 jobs to pay for her daughter's college, about the sacrifices she made gladly because she saw potential in the girl. She visits me on Sundays, my only day off. We have lunch together and she tells me about her studies, about the patients she meets during her internship. She has a huge heart. Like you? Mary was surprised by the comment. Mr. Harrison, you have a huge heart, Mary, and I was blind to it for all these years. That night, Victoria returned late and drunk. James pretended to be asleep while she stumbled through the room, laughing on the phone with someone. Oh, girls, it was hilarious. Peter imitated the waiter. No, James was sleeping when I arrived. What a boring sick person, right? He just stays there, looking at me with that pitiful face. James felt his stomach turn, not from sadness, but from anger. Anger at himself for having been so blind for so long. In the back room, Mary was checking messages from her daughter before sleeping. Jessica was sending photos of her studies, telling about an elderly patient she had helped feel better, asking how her mother's work was going. Mom, I dreamed you had your own house. One day that will happen, I promise. I love you. Mary smiled, put away her phone, and prepared for another day caring for people who didn't always recognize her worth. But something was changing in that mansion, and James Harrison was about to discover that true love had nothing to do with money, status, or appearance. It had to do with staying, simply staying when someone needs you. A week had passed since the beginning of James's charade, a week that was becoming the most revealing period of his adult life. That Thursday morning, an unexpected event would test even further the true characters of the people around him. James had felt ill during the early hours, a convincing performance of chest pain and shortness of breath. Mary, who slept with the intercom on in case he needed something, appeared in less than 2 minutes in his room, still in her nightgown and slippers. "Mr. Harrison, what happened?" she asked, genuinely worried. "Chest pain, I can't breathe properly," James groaned, internally admiring the dedication of the woman who had left her warm bed to care for him. Without hesitation, Mary helped him sit up, adjusted the pillows, and went to get a glass of water. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from genuine concern. "I'll call Dr. Stevens," she said, already dialing. "No, don't wake the doctor. Just stay with me a little," James murmured. Mary pulled the armchair close to the bed and sat down, carefully watching his breathing. She said nothing, just stayed there, present, radiating a calm that James had never experienced before. Victoria woke up from the noise and appeared at the bedroom door, hair disheveled and an irritated expression. "What's happening? Why so much noise?" "Mr. Harrison felt ill," Mary explained gently. Victoria looked at James with a mixture of annoyance and what seemed like disgust again. "James, this is getting too dramatic. It's always something." "Victoria?" "I could barely breathe," James said, testing her reaction. "You're exaggerating." "Yesterday you were fine for dinner," she retorted, crossing her arms. "Look, I have an important photo shoot tomorrow and need to sleep well. I can't keep losing sleep over these episodes." Mary looked at Victoria with an expression James had never seen before. It wasn't anger, but something close to controlled contempt. "Would you like me to take care of Mr. Harrison in the guest room so as not to disturb you?" Mary offered, her voice maintaining professional politeness but with noticeable coldness. "No need," Victoria said, already leaving. "Just try to make less noise, please." And she left, closing the door harder than necessary. The silence that followed was deafening. Mary looked at her own hands, clearly struggling not to say what she was thinking. "Mary," James said softly. "Yes, sir." "What are you thinking?" She hesitated for a long moment. "It's not my place to judge, Mr. Harrison. But you are judging, and I want to know." Mary raised her eyes to his, and James saw something he had never noticed before. Strength. A quiet, but unshakable strength. "I'm thinking that when my daughter was 5 and got pneumonia, I spent 3 weeks without sleeping properly. Not out of obligation, but because it was unthinkable to be anywhere other than by her side." The comparison was devastating in its simplicity. "Continue," James encouraged. "I'm thinking that real love doesn't get irritated by the other's suffering, celebrates when the person gets better, worries when they get worse, and never treats the pain of someone they love as an inconvenience." James felt something moving inside his chest. Not physical pain, but the painful recognition of truth. "Do you think Victoria doesn't love me?" Mary remained silent for so long that James thought she wouldn't answer. "Mr. Harrison, I've worked in wealthy houses for 20 years. I've seen many types of love. Love that cares, love that possesses, love that uses. Miss Victoria loves what you represent, not who you are. And what's the difference? If you lost everything tomorrow, the money, the house, the status, who would stay?" James didn't need to answer. Both knew the answer. The next morning, Victoria came down for breakfast wearing a pink gym outfit and imported sneakers. "Good morning, honey," she said, giving her protocol kiss. "How are you today?" "Better," James replied, observing her body language. "That's great. Look, I need to tell you some news. Patricia got an invitation to that benefit party, super exclusive on Saturday. You know, the one that only the elite of the elite goes to." James noticed how her eyes sparkled when talking about the party, the same sparkle they used to have when he gave her expensive jewelry. "You want to go to a party while I'm sick?" "Oh, James, don't be dramatic. It's a benefit event. I'm doing good work." She laughed as if the question were absurd. "Besides, you can't go anyway, and I can't waste an invitation like that. What if I get worse? What if I need you?" Victoria made that disgusted face again. "That's what Mary is for, right? She takes very good care of you, better than I do. Actually, I don't have a knack for these illness things." Mary, who was in the kitchen preparing natural vitamins for James, heard every word. She thought about her daughter Jessica, who had cancelled a date last weekend simply because Mary had a simple headache. "Different upbringing," she murmured to herself, squeezing fresh oranges. In the afternoon, while Victoria was at the beauty salon preparing for the benefit party, Mary organized a surprise for James. She brought a laptop and suggested they watch a documentary about architecture, something she had noticed he liked from the magazines in his office. "How did you know I like architecture?" James asked, impressed. "You have many books on the subject, always leave architecture magazines on the coffee table, and when you pass beautiful constructions in the city, you always slow down the car to observe them," Mary replied naturally. James was astonished. In 12 years, Victoria had never noticed his real interests. She knew he was rich, knew he could buy her things, but didn't know he dreamed of designing sustainable homes or that he admired Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture. "You've been observing me all these years?" Mary blushed slightly. "It's not observing, Mr. Harrison. It's knowing the people we live with. It's natural when we care about someone's well-being." "Care about—" "I'm sorry, sir. I talk too much." "No, Mary, you didn't talk too much. Actually, you talked too little during all these years." They watched the documentary together, and James discovered that Mary had intelligent opinions about design and functionality. She had only studied through high school, but had an intuitive understanding of how spaces affected people. "My daughter always says our little house is cozier than huge houses because it was made with love," Mary commented during a break. "Your house is small. 2 bedrooms in a development in the suburbs, but it's ours. It took me 15 years to be able to buy it." James felt a pang of something he had never experienced, genuine respect. Respect for someone who had built something from nothing with their own hands and sacrifice. That night, Victoria returned from the party drunk and euphoric, talking non-stop about the celebrities she had met, the contacts she had made, the photos she had posted. It was incredible, honey. I met the mayor, 3 congressmen, and that TV host. My photos already have 1,000 likes. She didn't ask how he had spent the day, didn't ask if he had felt better or worse, showed no genuine interest in his well-being. James finally understood the difference Mary had mentioned. Victoria loved the idea of being a successful millionaire's wife. Mary cared about James as a human being, and that distinction was changing everything. The decisive moment arrived unexpectedly on a sunny Tuesday. James was in the garden pretending to sunbathe to help with recovery when he heard familiar voices approaching. Victoria had brought her friends for lunch at home, something she hadn't mentioned. "Girls, welcome to my future home," Victoria said theatrically, guiding a group of 5 equally produced women through the house. James recognized some of them. Fernanda, Patricia, Camilla, all wives or girlfriends of wealthy men, all living empty lives filled with shopping, gossip, and competitions about who had the most successful husband. "Wow, Vic, this house is a dream," exclaimed Fernanda, posing for selfies. "You're going to be so happy here." "I really am. Just imagine. Infinity pool, 20-square-meter closet, garage for 12 cars." Victoria listed the possessions as if they were personal achievements. Mary appeared discreetly to serve the appetizers she had prepared. As always, the women treated her like furniture, talking about her in third person. "How lucky you are to have such an efficient maid," commented Patricia. "Mine is always breaking things." "Yeah, Mary is good at what she does," Victoria replied distractedly, more interested in showing off her new Louis Vuitton bag. That's when Camilla asked the question that would change everything. "Vic, where's James? Aren't we going to meet the millionaire fiancé?" Victoria's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Oh, he's indisposed." "Indisposed how?" Fernanda insisted, always eager for gossip. Victoria hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. She had avoided talking about James's illness with her friends, embarrassed to admit that her future husband wasn't at the peak of his form. "He's sick," she finally admitted, as if the word were profanity. "Sick, seriously? With what?" The questions multiplied. "Heart problems. He's been on absolute rest for 2 weeks." The group fell into an embarrassed silence. In their social circles, illness was taboo, something that happened to common people, not to the elite who thought themselves immune to mortal problems. "Wow, how complicated," murmured Patricia. "I can imagine how difficult it must be for you," Camilla added with false compassion. And then Victoria made the fatal mistake. Maybe it was embarrassment, maybe the need to maintain her status before her friends, or maybe simply her true nature emerging without filters. "Girls, you can't imagine how horrible it's been," she began, her voice taking on a dramatic tone. "He stays there in bed, looking at me with that pitiful face. It's depressing. I can't even look at him properly." Mary, who was collecting empty glasses, stopped moving. "And the worst part is he gets needy, wanting attention all the time. Victoria, stay with me. Victoria, don't go out today. It's suffocating." The friends laughed, encouraging her to continue. "Girls, I didn't get married to be a nurse. Just imagine. Instead of a honeymoon in Dubai, I'll have to push a wheelchair." The laughter got louder. Mary closed her eyes, trying to control the anger growing in her chest. "Thank God I have the maid to take care of these disgusting things. At least she's paid for it." That was the last straw. Mary placed the tray on the table harder than necessary, making enough noise to draw attention. All the women looked at her, surprised by the help's audacity to make noise during their conversation. "Excuse me," Mary said, her voice trembling slightly but firm. "May I speak?" Victoria looked at her incredulously. "Mary, you're interrupting our conversation." "I am, and I'm going to keep interrupting." The silence was absolute. None of them were used to being confronted by a domestic employee. Mary took a deep breath and looked directly at Victoria. "Miss Victoria, Mr. Harrison isn't a sick dog you can abandon at the first difficulty. He's a human being going through a difficult time." "Mary!" Victoria stood up furiously. "How dare you speak to me like this in front of my friends?" "Someone needs to speak. You're here laughing at his pain, calling it disgusting to care for someone who loves you, while he's there believing you care about him." Victoria's friends were open-mouthed. They had never witnessed a scene like this. "Who do you think you are to give me moral lessons?" Victoria screamed, her face red with rage and embarrassment. "I'm someone who knows what real love is," Mary replied, her voice gaining strength. Love doesn't run away when the person needs it. Love doesn't feel disgusted by weakness. Love doesn't laugh at pain. You're fired. You can fire me, but first I'm going to say everything I think, Mary continued, years of humiliation and repressed dignity finally exploding. You don't love Mr. Harrison. You love his money, the status, the jewelry, the cars. If he lost everything tomorrow, you'd run away. Victoria was trembling with rage. How dare you? I love James. Love? You can't even stay in the same room as him. I have to remind you to ask how he's doing. You go to parties while he needs you. I'm not obligated to become a nurse. You're not obligated to become a nurse, but you should want to stay close to someone you love, even when they're vulnerable. At that moment, James appeared at the terrace door. He had heard everything, every cruel word from Victoria, every courageous word from Mary. The silence was devastating. Victoria paled, seeing James there, realizing he had heard her cruel words. Her friends looked like statues, caught between embarrassment and morbid curiosity. Mary turned and saw James, her eyes filled with tears, not fear of losing her job, but sadness that he had heard those horrible things. Mr. Harrison, she began. Mary, James said softly, his voice loaded with an emotion she had never heard before. Thank you. James, Victoria tried to recover. I can explain. But James wasn't looking at her. He was looking at Mary, the only person in that house who had had the courage to defend him when he couldn't defend himself. Mary, you're not fired, he said, still looking into her eyes. Actually, I think we all need to talk. The confrontation was just beginning, and James Harrison was finally ready to see the people around him as they truly were. James walked slowly to the center of the terrace, his eyes scanning each face present. Victoria, he said, his voice calm but loaded with an authority she had never heard before. You said I stay in bed with a pitiful face, that I'm depressing, that caring for me are disgusting things. James, I was nervous. I said nonsense, Victoria stammered, trying to approach him. No, James raised his hand, stopping her from approaching. You spoke your truth. For the first time in 2 years, you were honest about your feelings. Victoria's friends exchanged uncomfortable looks, realizing they were witnessing the end of a relationship. And you, Mary? James turned to the housekeeper, who still had tears in her eyes. You risked your job to defend me. Why? Mary swallowed hard, struggling to find the right words. Because nobody deserves to be ridiculed when they're vulnerable, regardless of social class or money. Even me, who treated you as invisible for 12 years. Even you, sir. James closed his eyes for a moment, as if making a difficult decision. When he opened them, there was new determination in his gaze. I have a confession to make to all of you. Victoria frowned, confused. I'm not sick. The silence exploded into confusion. Victoria blinked several times as if she hadn't processed the information. What do you mean you're not sick? I pretended. For these 2 weeks I pretended to have heart problems to discover who really cares about me. The revelation fell like a bomb. Victoria's friends whispered among themselves, and Mary simply nodded as if a puzzle piece had finally fallen into place. You pretended, Victoria stammered, her voice rising an octave. You pretended to be sick. That was the most honest thing I've done in years, James said, looking directly at her, because it revealed who you really are. But why? Because I needed to know. I needed to know if you would love me if I were vulnerable, if you would stay with me if I needed care, if you would see me as a human being, not as a walking bank account. Victoria was speechless, trying to process the information and its implications. And I found out, James continued, his voice gaining strength, I found out that you can't even stay in the same room with me when you believe I'm sick, that you prefer parties to keeping me company, that you call me disgusting and depressing to your friends. James, this is crazy. You deceived me. I gave you the opportunity to show who you really are, and you showed me. Victoria looked around desperately, as if seeking support. Her friends averted their gazes, embarrassed. But I love you, she screamed, tears of rage and desperation streaming down her face. You love my money, James replied with deep sadness. You love the idea of being a millionaire's wife, but you don't love me. Mary watched everything in silence, still trying to understand why James had included her in the test. And you, Mary, James turned to her again. Did you know I was pretending? Mary hesitated for a moment. I suspected, Mr. Harrison. Some things didn't add up, But even knowing it might be pretense, I couldn't treat you badly, because if it were real, you would be suffering. The simplicity of the answer hit James like lightning. Even suspecting he was lying, Mary had continued to care for him with dedication and affection. "For 12 years I treated you like furniture," James said, his voice heavy with regret. "I never asked about your life, your dreams, your daughter. I never recognized your value as a human being. Mr. Harrison, no, let me finish. You cared for me without expecting recognition. You defended me, risking your job. You showed more dignity and character in 2 weeks than I showed in decades." Tears began to flow down Mary's face. "I apologize," James continued, his voice breaking slightly. "I apologize for years of indifference, for treating you as if you had no feelings, dreams, a life of your own. You deserved respect, and I gave you invisibility." "James, this is ridiculous," Victoria interrupted, her voice hysterical. "You're apologizing to an employee. She's paid to take care of the house." "She's a woman who sacrificed years of her life to keep this house running," James retorted firmly. "A mother who works tirelessly to give her daughter a college education. A person with more integrity in her little finger than you have in your entire body." Victoria was shocked by the harshness of the words. "Our engagement is cancelled," James declared, removing the engagement ring from his finger. "You can keep the ring. Consider it compensation for the wasted years." "You can't do this to me," Victoria screamed. "I cancelled my life for you. I planned our wedding. You planned an expensive party, not a wedding based on love." Victoria looked at her friends, seeking support, but found only embarrassment and morbid curiosity. Realizing she had lost, she grabbed her purse and headed for the exit. "You'll regret this, James Harrison," she screamed from the door. "When you get tired of playing saint with Mary, you'll see that you made the biggest mistake of your life." And she left, followed by her friends, who whispered animatedly about the scandal they had just witnessed. Alone on the terrace, James and Mary remained silent for a long moment. "Mary," James said finally. "Yes, Mr. Harrison." "Stop calling me Mr. Harrison. My name is James." Mary smiled through her tears. "Thank you, James. No, thank you for showing me the difference between true love and interest, for teaching me about dignity, sacrifice, and character, for defending me when I didn't deserve it. Everyone deserves to be defended when they're vulnerable." "That's exactly the kind of person you are," James said, genuine admiration in his voice. "And I want to learn to be someone worthy of your friendship." Mary looked at him with surprise. "Friendship? If you'll allow me, if you can forgive 12 years of blindness and arrogance." Mary extended her hand. "Friendship," she said, shaking his hand firmly. It was the beginning of something completely new. Not just a new friendship, but a new version of James Harrison. A version that finally understood that a person's worth isn't measured by the size of their bank account. 6 months later, James Harrison's mansion was still imposing, but it had changed. Not in physical structure, but in the energy it emanated. Where once reigned the cold of ostentation, there was now human warmth. Mary was no longer just the housekeeper. James had insisted she become the house administrator, with tripled salary and profit sharing in some investments. More importantly, she was treated as family. "Good morning, Mary," James said, entering the kitchen that Saturday morning. "Good morning, James," she replied, smiling as she prepared coffee for both, a tradition they had developed on weekends. "What time does Jessica arrive?" 2 o'clock. She's excited to tell about her internship at the General Hospital." James smiled. He had met Jessica 3 months ago and was impressed by the young woman, intelligent, determined, and with the same generous heart as her mother. Without Mary knowing, he had offered a full scholarship so she could dedicate herself completely to her studies, without needing to work. "And the surprise is ready?" he asked, barely able to contain his own excitement. "It is. The deed arrived yesterday. I can't believe you really did this." James had bought a 3-bedroom house in a middle-class neighborhood for Mary and Jessica, not as a condescending gift, but as recognition for years of dedication and as an investment in the future of 2 extraordinary women. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his lawyer. "James, I have news about Victoria," said Dr. Carvalho from the other end of the line. In the months following the breakup, Victoria had tried everything to get back together. Tears, emotional blackmail, legal threats, even attempts to seduce him through third parties. When nothing worked, she began spreading malicious stories about James having gone crazy, and about Mary having bewitched her boss. "What happened?" James asked. "The Ashford family is facing tax issues, audits and pending matters. Victoria is trying to find a new husband candidate among her contacts, but her reputation, let's say, isn't very good." James felt no satisfaction with the news, just distant sadness. Victoria had chosen her path. "And the foundation? How are the preparations going?" "Everything on track. The Mary Thompson Foundation will be officially launched next week." This had been James's biggest surprise, inspired by Mary's story. A woman who had fought alone to give her daughter an education, he created a foundation to offer scholarships for children of domestic employees and service workers. "The foundation name was your idea?" Dr. Carvalho asked. "It was. Mary deserves to have her name associated with something good. She's proof that dignity and character don't depend on money." After hanging up, James found Mary in the garden tending to the flowers, not out of obligation, but because she had discovered she enjoyed gardening. "Mary, can I ask you a question?" "Always. Have you really forgiven me for the years of indifference?" Mary stopped watering the roses and looked at him with that gentle smile he had learned to value. "James, holding grudges is like carrying stones in your chest. You changed. That's what matters. Sometimes I wonder if I deserve a second chance. We all deserve second chances when we genuinely want to be better." At that moment, the gate opened and Jessica appeared radiant in her nursing uniform. "Mom, James!" she shouted, running to hug them both. "How was the internship today?" Mary asked, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Amazing. I helped an elderly lady who was scared about surgery. I stayed with her until she calmed down. You know what she told me? That I have the same caring way as my mother." James watched mother and daughter embracing and felt something he had never experienced before, genuine joy at seeing people he loved being happy. "Jessica," he said, taking an envelope from his pocket, "I have something for you both." "James, you didn't need to," Mary began. "I need to. You two changed my life. You taught me about true love, about dignity, about what really matters." Jessica opened the envelope and screamed, Mom, these are the deeds to a house of our own." Mary was speechless, tears streaming down her face. "James, this is too much." "It's not too much. It's too late. I should have recognized your worth years ago." The three embraced in the garden, united by something money could never buy: respect, affection, and the certainty that they had found a true family. Meanwhile, across town, Victoria Ashford was in another chic bar, trying to impress a middle-aged businessman with stories about her glamorous life. But her eyes had lost their sparkle, and her laughter sounded false even to herself. She had lost James, lost her status, and most importantly, lost the chance to learn what true love was. Back at the mansion that night, James, Mary, and Jessica had dinner together for the first time. The enormous dining table, which once hosted only empty conversations about appearances, now echoed with genuine laughter and plans for the future. "How many families will the foundation help?" Jessica asked. 50 in the first year, 100 in the second. "We want more stories like your mother's to be possible," James replied. "And the best part," Mary added, "is that it won't be charity. It will be recognition. Recognition that everyone deserves opportunities." James looked at the two extraordinary women at his table and knew he had made the best decision of his life. Not when he pretended to be sick, but when he decided to really listen to what that had revealed. He had discovered that true love can't be bought. It's earned day by day with small gestures, genuine care, and the courage to stay when things get difficult. Mary had taught him this without knowing it. She had given him the most valuable lesson of his life, simply by being who she always was, a dignified, courageous woman full of love to give. And James Harrison had finally learned to be worthy of receiving that love. The white marble mansion continued imposing against the sky of New York, but now it housed something infinitely more valuable than material wealth. It housed a family built on respect, affection, and the certainty that when we find true people, our lives transform forever. Mary Thompson had won not because she conquered money or status, but because her dignity and character had triumphed over prejudice and indifference, and that is always the greatest victory of all. 1 year later, James stood at the podium of the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel, addressing a crowd of philanthropists and business leaders at the annual gala of the Mary Thompson Foundation. In the front row sat Mary and Jessica, both elegantly dressed but maintaining their natural grace. "Ladies and gentlemen," James began, his voice steady and confident, "when I established this foundation, I wanted to honor someone who taught me the most important lesson of my life. She taught me that true character isn't measured by wealth, but by how we treat others when no one is watching." He looked directly at Mary, who smiled with quiet pride. "Mary Thompson worked in my house for 12 years. I'm ashamed to say that for most of that time I barely acknowledged her existence. She was just another employee to me, invisible and unimportant." The audience listened intently as James continued. "But when I was at my most vulnerable, or thought I was, Mary showed me what unconditional care looks like. She defended me when others mocked me. She stayed when others fled. She demonstrated grace under pressure and dignity in the face of disrespect." Tonight, I'm proud to announce that the Mary Thompson Foundation has awarded scholarships to over 200 students in its first year. These aren't just numbers. They're dreams made possible, futures secured, potential unlocked. Jessica stood and walked to the podium, her nursing school pin gleaming on her dress. "My name is Jessica Thompson, and I'm here because my mother, Mary Thompson, sacrificed everything to give me opportunities she never had." Her voice was strong and clear. "But I'm also here because James Harrison recognized that worth and character aren't determined by social class. When someone believes in you and invests in your potential, it changes not just your life, but the lives of everyone you'll touch." The audience erupted in applause. James watched as Mary wiped away tears of joy and pride. This was what redemption looked like. Not just personal transformation, but using that transformation to lift others up. After the gala, the three of them sat in the mansion's garden, now beautifully illuminated with soft lights that Mary had suggested. "Do you ever regret it?" Mary asked James quietly. "Regret what?" "Walking away from that life, from Victoria, from what people expected of you." James considered the question carefully. "Mary, I spent 52 years of my life accumulating things, money, status, possessions, but I was empty inside. These past months with you and Jessica have been the richest of my life, and it has nothing to do with money." Jessica looked up from the scholarship applications she was reviewing. "You know what's funny? At nursing school, my classmates are always talking about finding rich husbands to solve their problems. They don't understand that the real treasure is finding people who see your worth." The peaceful evening was interrupted by the sound of a car in the driveway. James frowned. They weren't expecting anyone. Through the window, they could see a familiar figure approaching. Victoria, looking haggard and desperate. "James, please," Victoria called out as she rang the doorbell. "I need to talk to you." James looked at Mary, who nodded encouragingly. "See what she wants," Mary said gently. "Some conversations need to happen for closure." James opened the door to find Victoria looking nothing like her former self. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her makeup was smudged, and her usual arrogant demeanor had been replaced by desperation. "Victoria, what are you doing here?" "I've lost everything, James. The family money is gone, tied up in legal issues. The man I was dating left when he found out about the financial problems. I have nowhere to go." James felt a mix of pity and sadness. "I'm sorry to hear that, Victoria. But what do you expect from me?" "I know I was wrong," Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. "I know I was selfish and cruel. I treated you badly when you needed me, and I was horrible to Mary. But please, James, can't we try again? I've learned my lesson." From the garden, Mary watched through the window. She could see the pain in Victoria's eyes, but also recognized the desperation of someone who was sorry for the consequences, not necessarily for the actions. "Victoria," James said gently, "I believe you're sorry, but you're sorry because you're facing consequences now, not because you understood what you did wrong." "That's not true," Victoria protested. "I realize now how much I hurt you. I was young and foolish, but I can change." James studied her face carefully. "When you thought I was sick, you called caring for me disgusting. You said being with me when I was vulnerable was suffocating. Those weren't words spoken in anger. They came from your heart." Victoria's face crumpled. "I was scared, James. I didn't know how to handle illness. I'm not like Mary. I wasn't raised to be nurturing." "It's not about being raised to be nurturing, Victoria. It's about choosing to be there for someone you claim to love, even when it's difficult." Mary appeared at James's side, having quietly approached from the garden. Victoria looked at her with a mixture of shame and resentment. "Hello, Victoria," Mary said simply, without hostility or triumph. I'm sorry you're going through a difficult time. Victoria stared at Mary in amazement. Even now, after everything that had happened, Mary was showing kindness. You don't hate me. Hate takes too much energy, Mary replied, and it doesn't change anything. I hope things work out for you. The grace in Mary's response seemed to break something in Victoria. She began to cry, not the manipulative tears of someone seeking sympathy, but the genuine tears of someone finally understanding what they had lost. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me, didn't I? Victoria whispered. James felt genuine compassion for her. Victoria, you deserve to find happiness and love, but you need to learn to love someone for who they are, not what they can give you. And you need to learn to stay when things get difficult. Victoria wiped her tears and straightened her shoulders. For the first time since James had known her, she looked genuinely humble. You're right. I have a lot of growing up to do. She turned to Mary. I owe you an apology. I treated you terribly, and you didn't deserve that. Mary nodded graciously. Apology accepted. I should go, Victoria said. But James, I want you to know, seeing how happy you are now, seeing the kind of person Mary is, it makes me realize what real love looks like. I hope someday I can find that and be worthy of it. As Victoria's car disappeared into the night, James and Mary stood together in the doorway. Do you think she meant it? James asked. I think she's starting to understand, Mary replied. Sometimes people need to lose everything to find out who they really are. Maybe this will be the beginning of real growth for her. Jessica joined them, having watched the entire encounter. That was the right thing to do, she said to both of them. Showing compassion even to someone who hurt you, that's what real strength looks like. 6 months later, James received a letter from Victoria. She had moved to a small town in Vermont, was working as a volunteer at a local hospital, and had started studying to become a certified nursing assistant. I'm learning what it means to take care of people, she wrote. It's hard work, but it's teaching me what you and Mary tried to show me, that love is about service, not about being served. James smiled as he read the letter to Mary over their Saturday morning coffee. Maybe there's hope for her after all. There's hope for everyone, Mary replied. That's what I've learned from this whole experience. People can change when they truly want to. 5 years have passed since that dramatic day when Mary defended James in front of Victoria and her friends. The Mary Thompson Foundation has grown into a major scholarship program, helping over 1,000 students pursue higher education. Jessica graduated top of her nursing class and now works at the Children's Hospital, following in her mother's footsteps of caring for others. Mary officially became James's business partner, using her practical wisdom to help guide his real estate investments toward affordable housing projects. Their friendship has deepened into something that resembles the family bond both had been missing. On a sunny afternoon, as they sat in the garden watching Jessica play with her own daughter, a beautiful 2-year-old named Mary in honor of her grandmother, James reflected on the journey that had brought them here. You know what I've learned, James said to Mary as they watched 3 generations of women who had overcome adversity through love and determination. What's that? The richest people aren't those with the most money. They're the people who are rich in relationships, rich in purpose, rich in the knowledge that they've made a difference in someone else's life. Mary smiled, watching her granddaughter toddle toward them with arms outstretched. And the most valuable inheritance we can leave isn't money or property. It's the example of how to treat others with dignity and love. As little Mary climbed into her grandmother's lap, James thought about how a simple test of character had revealed not just who Victoria truly was, but who he could become when he chose love over selfishness, compassion over indifference. The marble mansion still stood imposing against the New York skyline, but it had been transformed from a cold display of wealth into a warm home filled with laughter, purpose, and genuine love. And in that transformation, 3 lives had found their true meaning. In this story, James pretends to be sick, Victoria disappears, Mary stays. In life, it's similar. When times get tough, some people disappear, others weather the storm. And you? Which role do you play? Who around you is the Mary who acts without an audience? Think about it and tell us in the comments which scene most resembled your routine and why. If you liked the story, leave a like. This helps the story reach more people. See you in the next video.